gonna go.
Around
Count 15 seconds.
Count.
I have a wireless
Count
charger, but it doesn't work very good.
Yeah.
There's emergency prepared.
Thumbs up.
Okay.
Calling the meeting of the Citizens Involvement Committee for March 6, 2023 to order. Dennis, would you call the roll, please?
Sure. Welcome, everybody. Kanema, Linda,
Present.
I'm here also. Caulfield, Dan,
Here.
Elyville, Carla,
Here.
Dee Dee,
Here.
Gaffney Lane, no rep. Hazel Grove, no rep. Hillendale, Josh, here. Sarah,
Here.
McLaughlin,
Here.
Denise. Park Place, Steve,
Here.
and Bob is here. Rivercrest, Emily.
Here.
Great. And I think that's it. Last time, Bob, you mentioned there was, Tony was gonna be representing Two Rivers? Is he like online or?
He, as of Monday, was it Monday? They had a meeting this week, no, last week. And,
Oh, make sure you turn on your, mics.
he,
Your mics are on.
Two Rivers had a meeting
I think
last
the red
week
light is
and
on.
Red is on.
they
Red is on.
got organized again. And they voted Tony in as their chair. Tony is the owner of the antique store at Washington and Abernathy. Real nice guy, I stopped in and talked to him. They voted to have Brian Boyce as the CIC representative. If you recall, Brian was with the CIC before, and his lack of attendance caused us to have him removed. And I told the person that told me about his selection that we really hope that he'll have a better attendance this time. We really need people, like tonight, we've got people from everywhere. Great attendance. I'm really pleased to see that tonight. So, and I'll be talking to Brian. I know him personally, so I'll have a little heart-to-heart with him. Tell him we need him here.
Okay.
Let's see here. I'm going to move public comments up to the next item. So we can, are there any public comments?
I want to see how do we get our agenda?
Oh, hold on.
No. Laura. Let's see here. Laura, she will be presenting to us tonight. Okay, then the first presentation, number one, is Public Works, Josh Wheeler.
One second. I'll switch your screens. Give me one. Yep. Give me 1 second. I will get this up. People have questions. And then let's share the screen. And let's go with. Okay, let me know if you can see it, Josh. Does it work?
Yep, it's working. All right. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. It's been quite a while since I've been here. Tonight, I'm going to provide a presentation, and at the end, I'll tell you a little bit more about where you can find this and the purpose behind it. But it's called Private Development 101 from the Citizen Perspective. And this is about a 15, 20-minute presentation. So what is private development? Private development is anything from residential subdivisions to partitions, apartment complexes, townhome developments, cottage homes, office buildings, manufacturing, restaurants, anything that is built on private property, no matter the owner. This means that also we consider things like the new police station or the new public works building private development. Even though it's owned by a public entity, it's still private development. It goes through the private development process. Similar to the courthouse that Clackamas County is doing, that is a private development that goes through the development process. It just happens to be owned by a public entity. So private development can be broken up into 4 different categories. A type 1 permit is one that's over the counter, which does not have a public process associated with it. And those are typically done by someone coming into either the community development counter for building or planning, or to the public works counter to engineering, and getting an application, paying a fee, and usually drawing up some type of plan to show what the plan is. And as long as it meets the standards, they get a permit. If it doesn't meet the standards, we ask for revisions, and then we permit it after that. A type 2 is the most common. That has staff review with the ability for public comment. You'll learn more about that later. A type 3 goes through the planning commission typically, and that also has ability for public comment. And then a type 4 goes through the planning commission and the city commission with ability for public comment. So what is the general land use process? It generally starts with a property inquiry. We typically have people that come to our counters, sometimes by phone, sometimes by email, asking questions about what can I do with my property? Can I build X amount of houses on it? Can I expand the house? Can I get a driveway? All sorts of questions that we get that go into various processes of either building, planning, or engineering, or all 3. Sometimes people go forward with what they want to do, and we figure out which process they go through, the 1, 2, 3, or 4, or they decide not to go forward. But if they do go forward, then usually the next step is a pre-application conference. Pre-application conference is a non-binding meeting where we give as much information as we have at the time, but it could change later based on either codes changing or based on the application being different when we finally get it. Sometimes people go forward at this point. Again, sometimes they don't. On average, it's about 50-50. About 50% go forward, 50% don't, and that's a very flexible number. It varies from year to year. If they do go forward, the next step they do is a land use application. That is, they send all their documents in with a application and a fee, and that's when we start processing and reviewing things and see, does this meet city code? If it does not meet city code, then we offer conditions of approval, and that is what's part of a land use decision. Once that land use decision is made, then there's a public appeal period. If there have been people that have provided public comment previously, we'll get a little more into that later. Once that goes through, then they actually come in for permits. So quite often people get confused and they say, I'm done with land use, now I want to build my building. It's like, no, now you have to look for permits for that building. So it's a 2-step process, land use and then permits. We go through the submittal process, the revision process, the approval process, throughout all 3 divisions, and then ultimately they start construction. In public works, we require a pre-construction meeting for any project that has public improvements involved. And public improvements are roads, sewers, water mains, stormwater management, anything that is going to be publicly maintained or has public oversight like stormwater management to it. That does not include private items. However, the building department with the people in that position right now have said that for larger projects, they will start having building pre-construction meetings as well, but only for the larger projects. And then everyone starts construction. That can last a few months to a few years, depending on the size of the project. And then in public works, we go through a project closeout process where we end up making sure that all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted. And then they go into a 2-year maintenance period where those public improvements, those roads and utilities, are owned and maintained by them for a 2-year period, and then we take them over after 2 years to make sure that they function and do not have any issue with them by the end of that 2 years. This is a general timeline that talks about that same thing you'll see on the left side with the timing on the right side. We get property inquiries all the time. The pre-application conference is typically scheduled approximately 3 weeks after an application is made. Land use application has to be made within 6 months of a pre-application conference unless they have requested a 6-month extension for a full year. The land use decision is then made after a completeness process within 120 days, and that is a state law that requires that. Permit submittals have to be made within 3 years of a land use decision. If the decision has not been made in 3 years, then they have to start the whole process over. And that has some variation with it when you start getting to more complex projects, but what I'm giving here is an overview of most projects. There are nuances for special cases. The permit approval process typically takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months. I've seen it take up to a year. It just depends on the engineer and the developer and how quickly they go back and forth with revisions and trying to make their plans meet the standards and the conditions of approval. Pre-construction meeting typically happens 1 to 2 weeks after that permit approval, and then after that, and that's when construction starts, and ultimately that can last a long time. Project closeout then happens approximately 4 weeks before the actual ready to occupy or plat the project. And then that 2-year maintenance period is for a 2-year period once all those public improvements have been accepted, which is typically at the time of plat or at the time of occupancy. So who is involved? And so this is important from a citizen perspective to understand, where do I go when I have a question during all of these steps? The property inquiry process most often lands in engineering and planning's lab, and we speak about the various items that we're responsible for depending on the department. Pre-application conference, all 3 divisions are involved. The land use application, it is the applicant's responsibility solely. That private developer is the one making the application. The land use decision is made by planning with the assistance from engineering. And so when we write that staff report, planning and engineering collaborate together to create that report, but the ultimate decision is made by the community development director and the staff there. Permit submittals are typically made to engineering and or building. Sometimes only one is involved, but more often than not, both departments are involved. The permit approval, again, also is engineering and building, but assistance from planning, because quite often things that need to be on the building permit are planning conditions, and things that are in the engineering permit are planning conditions. And an example would be that building conditions would have something like the facade or the location of the entryway or things like that, orientation of the building. On the engineering, the planning comments would look like something like trees and landscaping. Pre-construction meeting is currently held by engineering, although I said that building may start doing those for larger projects. During construction, when we're talking about roads and utilities and erosion control, that's 100% engineering, with the caveat that if they are private utilities, utilities that will not be owned by the public, that are purely for the private use, then that goes under a plumbing permit for the building department. But a lot of what you see out there that's not the building quite often deals with engineering. And then the project closeout and the 2-year maintenance period deal only with engineering. So when is the public involved? So during that type 2, 3, or 4 land use application, the public gets noticed within a certain radius of the project, and a neighborhood meeting is required. And the public has the opportunity to make public comment on the record at this time. They can do that in writing. They can do that at these neighborhood meetings and making sure that those notes get captured in the meeting notes of that meeting. And in some cases, you have the ability to make a verbal comment if you're speaking before the Planning Commission or the City Commission, but you can make written comment during any of those times during the land use applications. When there is an appeal, a type 2, 3, or 4 has the ability for an appeal, but the appeals only occur for those that gave public comment. So if public comment was not given, then there is no ability for appeal. But if it was given, the people that did give comment have the right to appeal. What Public Works is now doing is during the pre-construction meeting, we are sending invitations to the neighborhood chair if there is an active neighborhood for that project, letting them know that a project is happening in your neighborhood and that we're at the point of construction. If there is not a neighborhood chair, we'll be sending it to the CIC chair And then in construction, the public is always able to connect and contact Public Works at any time during construction to make comments and ask questions, whether it be hours of construction, whether it be traffic control, whether it be erosion occurring that they're seeing. Whatever your questions are, we will listen to them, we will address them, and we will make sure they meet all of our design standards, conditions of approval, and city code. So when is the public not involved? So general property inquiries and pre-application conferences are two places where they're not involved. These are private meetings for those interested parties to learn more about what's involved in the process. Permit reviews of land use decisions during the permit process to make sure that they meet the standards. That's a part where they're not involved. Type 1 reviews where someone's getting a driveway permit or a franchise utility permit, maybe for an electric service, for a tree removal permit, anything that's a smaller over-the-counter permit, the public is not involved in those. But those are public documents that you're welcome to make a public records request to get copies of. And then that also copies what I'm calling over-the-counter permit reviews. Depending on which department you're in, one might call it type 1 review, one might just call it over-the-counter. They're generally the same thing. Then how can the public get involved? So during that type 2 process, and I mentioned this a little bit before, you can be involved in that neighborhood meeting, making comment on the record about that application. You can make written public comment during those land use applications, and that can be email, that can be a letter. And then during that land use decision, you can make a written appeal during that type 2 process. If that appeal goes to a planning commission or city commission meeting, then that's where verbal comment can be made. And there you see in the type 3 and 4 process, which not only includes the appeals, but includes some of the things that you heard before, that's where you have written and verbal public comment possibilities. During that pre-construction meeting, you can make comments during the construction process and ask questions like, when are they going to be working? What should we expect? What are they going to do about dust control? There's several things that we hear often, and so we try and address those in the pre-construction meeting. But ultimately, those are focused on things that happen during construction, and they do not rehash what happened during the land use process now that the decisions have been made. And then during construction, you can make comment anytime, in person, email, phone, any other form of communication that gets to our ears that we can give a comment back to. You're welcome to do that. So what are the standards that we apply to be able to make these decisions and issue these permits? In planning, we have state land use laws. We have the city code. We also have the comprehensive plan that guides a lot of that. In engineering, we have the city code that we use, but also we have many engineering design standards with water, sanitary. We're getting ready to adopt street standards, hopefully. And then we also have standards on stormwater and numerous policies on various things as well. And in the building, they follow the state building codes. Where do you go for more information? If you go to the Engineering Development Services website, you'll have a ton of information from what are our fees, what about system development charges, what about this presentation you're seeing right here, where's my permit forms, where are those construction details and standards. All of that can be found there. It's just a ton of information. But if that's too hard to find and too difficult and you'd rather just go to the source, go to ocpublicworks@orcity.org or call 971-204-4601 and you can find your question answered right away. And if that person that answers that does not have the answer right away, they will find someone that does. Also, for more information, we have a projects map where not only do we provide in Public Works our capital improvement projects and what's going to happen for the year. This map is updated 1 to 2 times a year, but also the private development which is going on or anticipated to be going on during that year. That is all on that map. We also have project websites, so if you go to orcity.org/projects, anything that goes through a type 2 or larger process, or any capital improvement project, they are all in that projects page. It's a very lengthy page of items, but that's where the land use decision is provided. That's where the notice of decision and the various planning requirements are in there, and then a lot of information about capital projects. And public meetings like the one we're in right now. If you go to the meetings tab, you'll be able to see what meetings are coming up and what items are on that agenda. So in conclusion, we've got a little picture here of a guy at the Pisa Collection Agency, and we've got someone saying, I said to put a lien on that tower property. Well, he clearly didn't mean making the property lean and almost fall over, that he meant some type of financial lien. Sometimes that's what we talk about between whether it be elected officials, whether it be within ourselves, our own departments, internally with departments, with citizens. Sometimes we don't speak the same language, and we try to, but we don't always, and that this is a case of that. And what we're trying to do with this presentation is help people understand how they can get involved, where they can get involved, and hopefully hear some of the terminology that allows them to know the process, and allows them to be involved in the level that they want to be.
Josh, are you an engineer?
I am an engineer.
Well, that little picture shows that engineers do have senses of humor.
We do, that's true. That's true. And so ultimately, we want to hear from you. You know, is there anything we can do differently that allows the public to be involved, that helps you understand, be informed, and be part of the process? And what forms of engagement can we add or change? We already have public project websites, we have web pages, we have maps, we require the neighborhood meetings, we do those mailings, we email, phone, and in person, but sometimes that is not necessarily enough, and so we're looking to find out what else is there, and we'd love to find new ways to connect. That's the end of our presentation.
Carla?
Hey, so first off, I wanted to mention, it'd be nice if, you know, like residents in the neighborhood could be involved earlier in the process possibly, like, you know, possibly type 2. We have a development coming in next to a historic lot in my neighborhood, and it would have been really nice to talk to the developer ahead of time, because I think maybe we could have like kind of worked together a little bit on some feedback to where maybe the neighborhood would be a little bit more happy with what happens. And, you know, it'd be nice if we could look at something like that in the future. The other thing is we had a development this weekend working 8:30 in the morning on Sunday. I'm sure you heard about it. Yeah. And it'd be nice to have like somewhere to contact, because a few of the neighbors called the sheriff's office because the police department's closed, and the sheriff's office has no idea what to do. As far as they know of, they're looking at the city website and they look at contractors being able to work on a Sunday versus a developer. Those are two separate entities. So if those were together on the same page, I think maybe the developer, to the developer's defense, they'd understand more, versus assuming that maybe they're doing contracting work versus developing work. That's just my advice.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I have a question, if I may. The development that's in your neighborhood, if it was a type 2, then it needs to go through the neighborhood meeting process. But if it's not a type 2, like let's say a single family house, or even like a duplex or a triplex, those don't go through the type 2.
The only reason it is because it's going to technically have to go against the historic review board, because it's a historic lot, even though that lot's being split.
Yeah, so if it's historically impacted, then it would go through at least the historic review portion. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Emily, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, it says like within 300 feet.
Speak into your
Speak
microphone.
on your thing, I can't hear you.
Yeah, it said within 300 feet, the property owners or whoever's living in that area would be notified. But I guess I'm wondering, like, is that to scale? So is that like if someone wants a new garage door, then everyone within 300 feet knows? And also, if there's a large development, is that always just 300 feet within the development, or?
So the notification requirements deal with whenever notification is required, which would be a type 2 or higher, but not a type 1, then it's 300 feet as the crow flies with a radius of that development. So whoever is in that 300-foot swath, and actually we use our GIS department to create that swath of 300 feet, and whoever's in that gets a notice. But if you're 301 feet out of that, and that's where it would have hit you, then you don't get notice.
Okay, I guess like I'm in Rivercrest and I don't know if those notifications sent to Rivercrest residents like about the Holmes Lane development, but certainly like people who drive on that street are gonna be affected. And so I guess I'm wondering like, is there anything to account for like the scope of the project, and how it affects residents in that area? Or is that it's a very fixed number?
Yeah, that's a very fixed number. And the best way for people to find out what's going on is to keep an eye on that project website to see what projects are occurring and click on them and go, oh, that's near me, or I use that road a lot. I want to make comment, because just because you're not in the 300-foot swath doesn't mean you can't make public comment. So the development can be on the north side of town where you work, but you live on the south side, and that you don't feel that meets the code for some reason. You have every right to comment on that. Anyone can comment. You don't have to be within 300-foot swath, but the way to find out about it is probably those project websites. That's probably the easiest way to find out.
Yeah, I guess I'm just like, because so many residents don't even know about that, that it would be great just to have like another way of contacting residents who it's not even on their radar, like to check the city website.
Yeah, and what we're doing to try and reach out to residents is, this presentation is now on the website. It's on our YouTube page, because that was a way of creating the video. It's going to be a social network posting later this week by our communications coordinator, and then it was emailed out to all the neighborhood associations to let you know about it, and we're asking that all the neighborhoods tell their people about it, because we don't have all those email addresses. It's going to be in the next newsletter, the summer edition. It'll be in there. It was referenced in the spring edition, but we're going to have more about it in the summer edition. So besides a letter to every house, which we also know that not everyone will read, so we aren't doing that yet. We're just looking for any avenue we can find to make people aware, for those that are interested. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda?
The time frame from start until you can start. In Kenema, we've had several homes, and they're just individual people building their home for their own private enjoyment. And it takes them 3 years. That just seems like an astronomical time. And then from when you start that period, and then supply chains, the windows that were approved are no longer available.
Yeah.
That just seems like it's an astronomical long time with interest taking.
Sure. So I really appreciate that comment, and this is, in my opinion, kind of an education point that the development process does not take 3 years. The development process for a person that perfectly knows everything, which I fully realize is not the majority, for a person that perfectly knows everything, you do your pre-application conference, there's 3 weeks, you make your submittal in the next month, completeness at 120 days, we've now talked about 6 months right there. The permit process, probably 3 if you're really good, 9 months. You're under construction within a year. Now, Kenema's a little different because you're only allowed to construct in certain times of the year because it's mostly in a geologic hazard area. But someone that knows the process should be able to get the process done in one that meets the code, there's no public concerns, all of that, but the simple, basic, to the point, it's a year or less, 9 to 12 months. What we find is that a lot of people don't know the process, understandably. And so we hope that in those inquiries, the pre-application process, that they start seeing what they're getting into. And quite often, especially with the more complex ones that deal with a natural resource or a geologic hazard or a floodplain or public concern, that really drags the process out. And then they don't know what engineer to hire. They don't know what architect to hire. They don't know what geologic engineer to hire. And then that person takes 3-6 months to do their reports. And now all of a sudden we get to 3 years. A lot of that is based on them trying to figure out, I want to make use of my property, but I don't know how, and kind of doing what they can to get through the process. And sometimes it's just at their own rate. They have 40-hour-a-week jobs, and they finally got back to it and go, okay, now I'm going to have this engineer do this for me, or this architect do this for me. And it takes them a long time because it's not their day job. Whereas the people doing it in 9 to 12 months, they're developers that are doing it, every day. And so we try and help them, but I've actually tracked the amount of time it takes for our staff to do the work versus all the consultants on the background. And our timeline is much shorter than everyone else's, but it doesn't feel that way.
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, bribes work.
Not to the city.
Well, they do, because when we built our house, my wife got disgusted with the developer. She didn't think he was working fast enough. So she went up, she got a big box of donuts and went up to planning or public works, set them on the counter, and the first person she came to her, she says, "I'm a dumb blonde civilian, don't know anything." And handed him the donuts, and they were right there helping her right away.
That sounds like the old days.
I was just joshing you.
I know, she's shocking. But the old days, there's a lot of truth to that. Yeah.
Denise?
I don't remember how I did it, but I got signed up for emails for building projects. And
Yeah, you're just
it's on the
promoting that.
city website somewhere. So that could be something you could do to find out what's happening around near you.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, Christina just sent that out in
Yeah,
something
and
recently.
it's always on my liaison report every month in the CIC. So if you can't remember where to go to sign up, click on the liaison report and send it any neighbor that wants to know more. Like that's the easiest way. Either click the whole city or click the neighborhoods you want to know about.
A little tip, if your neighborhood association is giving a presentation to like planning or city commission or planning commission, and they don't all want to speak, but you want to have them able to speak in the future as a person of interest or a person in standing, all you have to do is during your presentation, put a list of all the people and their emails who may wish to speak in the future. And that allows them to be a person of standing for that particular subject. And then they have the right to speak at any future meeting.
Yeah. And if you ever have questions about, do I have standing, how do I get standing, speak to the planner assigned to the project, and they will make sure that whatever you need to do, whether that be an email or speaking or whatever it is, they'll make sure that you get that ability. Yep. But the key is having that. The more communication we can have, the better we can help our public understand what's going on and address the concerns. But if we don't know, then we can't help as much.
Okay, well, thank you, Josh, appreciate it. That was a very informative presentation. Our next presentation is Bee City USA by Laura Ross.
Oh, that should
Hi
be
there,
up
can you
here.
hear me?
Our screens are all
We can hear you, but we can't
I
see you.
know, hold on one second.
Okay.
Did that do it?
There you are.
And unfortunately, Laura's gear is going to be small because this is the main audio and we can't make her bigger, I don't think. We pin, oh, there we go, I did it.
Yeah, there we go.
How do you, my first question,
Oops.
She's going to.
Laura, is how do you pronounce that name? Xerxes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Just to clarify, should I try to keep it around like 15 minutes? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So just to jump in, I am Laura Ross. I'm the coordinator of Bee City USA for the Xerxes Society. And I'm here to talk to you about our certification program. So just first off, the Xerxes Society has been around since 1971, and we focus on invertebrate conservation, everything from the western monarch butterfly to freshwater mussels to even some rare snails. And you may already know a bit about why pollinators are important, but I just want to give a little overview. About 85% of flowering plants require pollinators to move pollen and fertilize flowers. And we rely on pollinators for about 1 in 3 bites of food and drinks we consume. And pollinators provide over $30 billion in value to crops in North America. There's a whole wide world of pollinators. A lot of people think there's just the honeybee, but they're actually non-native. They're introduced from Europe. And there's actually 3,600 species of native bees in the US. And globally, about 40% of pollinator species are at risk of extinction. And about a little over a quarter of bumblebee species in the US, or rather in North America, are in decline currently. But I just wanted to share this beautiful photo of just the diverse array of bees out there. They provide all sorts of services. They help our wildlands, they help our food production. Some are specialists and some are generalists. So it's just a joy to learn about all these different species and their very unique behaviors. And honeybees, though they are very important to agriculture, are not endangered. They are more of an agricultural product in North America, and by keeping hives, you're not necessarily doing anything to help the bees that are in decline. So we really focus on native bees and native natural habitat. There's no need to create a hive, build a hive, or have any man-made structures if you want to help save the bees. The major drivers of pollinator decline are habitat loss and degradation, pesticide use, diseases and pathogens, and climate change. And so that's really why Bee City exists. We help support communities who want to protect pollinators in their area. And the way they do that looks it can take many forms. We provide a basic structure for certification, and from there, communities really get to make these programs their own. So every city and every campus looks different, but we really want them to find a way to integrate the concept of pollinator certification or conservation into the personality of their community. So we have a picture of Talent, Oregon on the bottom there, and at the top is Belmont, Texas. So here is a nice map of our existing bee cities and bee campuses. Campuses are in the blue-purple circles, and bee cities are the orange triangles. We currently have 333 cities and campuses that are certified, and we're in 46 states plus DC and Puerto Rico. And we grow at about a rate of about 50 new cities and campuses per year. So this is a little zoomed in view of the kind of extended metro area. I wanted to include Lower Columbia Community College since they just got certified at the top there. But yeah, we got a nice little hub in the Portland area. So I think Oregon City would have a lot of good partners if you were to choose to pursue certification. We try to create little regional hubs. So you have a cohort to talk about pesticide reduction issues, different plant pathogens or anything that you have on your radar as far as creating good habitat. We have local people to help you in addition to our staff. So Bee City and Bee Campus USA is based on 4 pillars, and this is what all of Xerces pollinator conservation work really comes back to. The way to help bees is through 4 different paths. We need to increase native plants, pollinator plants. We need to provide safe nesting habitats. We need to reduce or eliminate pesticide usage, and we need to spread the word. So if we do these 4 actions, we know we can help native bees. So zooming out into your larger community, pollinator habitat can look like many different things. Some bees can travel almost 2 miles in their resource seeking, looking for nectar and maybe pollen, depending if they're female and they're reproducing. So some can travel, larger ones tend to travel further, but some bee species only travel a few yards in their whole lifetime. So habitat luckily can be quite small and still really make a difference. So I just wanted to run through some real pretty photos real quick of how these habitats, pollinator habitats, can look in your community. It could be something more traditional, like seeing pollinator plants around a lawn. It could be the lawn itself, allowing violets and self-heal and clover to bloom and mowing higher. It could be eliminating your lawn and putting in a meadow. It could be the parking strip between your sidewalk and your street, also known as health strips. It could be an educational garden, something that the community can access. It could have signage. It could be a literal community garden. It can be something where, you know, communities or members are planting vegetables, and you maybe frame the outside with pollinator plants, or share pollinator seeds with community gardeners and have them spread those calendula seeds and sunflower seeds and milkweed throughout the garden. Or it could be something kind of outside of the box, like thinking about office landscaping and street landscaping. And then you may have seen the increase in bioswales and catchments. Those can serve dual purposes. It can be something that helps slow down water and decrease flooding and to clean that water, but it can also be great pollinator habitat. 9-bark is a great choice. And then one of my favorites, green roofs. They can look many, many different ways. They could be a vegetable garden, or they could be a bunch of sedums, and it could be, you know, blueberry plants, as I saw in Georgia last year, and just a whole variety of styles and personalities. And then, of course, parks and green spaces can be excellent habitat, and playgrounds and recreation sites. And, of course, nature reserves. Wetlands and riparian, once again, serving that dual purpose of keeping our water clean and slow and cold, and also providing that good habitat. And then increasingly, we're seeing the use of pollinator habitat in utility rights of way. And if anyone's interested in pursuing something like this, Xerces has a ton of expertise. We even have a certification coming for like solar arrays and stuff like that to increase pollinator habitats. We have lots of like federally recognized guidance, meaning federal policies around this. And then on a similar note, we work with many highway administration, the Federal Highway Administration, and departments of transportation to come up with guidance for roadside pollinator habitat. But that's just like the basic overview of just to get you inspired of the many ways pollinator habitat can be in your community. But if you chose to do something like Bee City, with Bee City, there's the greater benefits of helping pollinators, but you also could be increasing food production in your community gardens and urban farms. You're creating healthier neighborhoods, both psychologically and as far as bringing in additional plants. Many of our Bee Cities and Bee campuses choose to partner with local businesses and boost those sustainable businesses that are trying to be good community partners, and we really encourage that. And then you get to be part of a national network to share ideas and support each other. And then the direct benefits of being a member of Bee City is you're mailed a large welcome package with books and signs and resources to get you started. You have access to an online affiliate portal. We provide customizable logos and street sign artwork, so you can put up a sign. And we provide ongoing training that's open to anyone who wants to participate. And then we also have a new promo kit series for major events like Earth Week and No Mow May and a fall Leave the Leaves campaign. And then we provide support through consulting. We have pesticide reduction experts, pollinator experts. We can help with planting ideas or ideas for reducing pesticide usage. And then there's a lot of opportunities for free promotion of your work. I won't get into the outreach kits too much, but we provide just a variety of materials to help you easily communicate pollinator conservation in your community so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And just to kind of go over the basic application process, if you chose to pursue becoming a Bee City affiliate, there's a resolution you pass through the city council and an application fee between $100 and $500, depending on your size. You need to have a city department that sponsors the committee, and a committee, which I'll get into. And then the commitments each year, which I'll also get into, include creating pollinator habitat, conducting outreach, and coming up with an integrated pest management plan for the city. Once you're certified, you have a full calendar year to get things up and running. So if you were certified in 2023, you wouldn't have to report until 2025. But after that, you'd report each year on your activity and pay a renewal fee, which is the same as the application fee. Just real quick, the Bee City Committee, we ask that there's a good variety of people involved, at least one city staffer involved with parks, landscape, or grounds. And then beyond that, it could be master gardeners, retired city workers, city councilors, the mayor in many cases in smaller towns, and just passionate volunteers. Here's the fee. I forgot to look up the size of Oregon City. I apologize. I'm just north of you in Milwaukee, but I forgot to check your population.
The 300.
And just a little bit about the different commitments. So habitat can look like, organizing students to spread mulch at the community garden or water native plants when it gets hot. We have to create a native plant list. You can totally crib from the Xerces Society's free plant lists online. This is our guide for our region. We pick plants that are easy to grow, provide consistent blooms throughout the growing season, and a variety of colors and shapes to attract that wide variety of pollinators. Part of that commitment that I mentioned about developing an integrated pest management plan, it can apply to different scales for the city. We can talk to you about that further. Excuse me. And again, our staff is available to provide free consultation whether or not you become a bee city. We do want to support cities coming up with an integrated pest management plan and creating a policy in which pesticides are a last resort. We want you to be able to educate your staff about what alternative methods there are that can create a healthier, more sustainable ecosystem within your city. And as I mentioned, for the integrated pest management plan, the three pillars, the three legs of the stool are prevention, monitoring, and minimizing pesticide harm when pesticides are used. And we have examples of affiliate IPM plans you can use and lots of free publications on our website, on the Xerces website mostly. So we're here to support you if you choose to go that route. For outreach and education, it can really be a huge variety of what cities choose to enact for their education and outreach. It could be trivia nights, it could be lectures, photography exhibits with famous bee photographers in some cases. It could be a documentary film screening, a parade, social media. You can really think outside the box. And on the left here, we have Hillsborough, tabling, and then on the right, again, Beaumont. I love their float for their parade. And signage is just a super important way to communicate to the public and celebrate the fun, good work you're doing. So we really encourage you to have signs either, it doesn't have to mention Bee City with everything, just at least one sign that mentions Bee City, but beyond that, handmade signs, educational signs, interpretive signs can all be really valuable tools to show people how these things look in the real world. I won't get into this too much, but one city chose to design pollinator garden designs for their city. Public acknowledgement, as I mentioned, having at least one sign up is great. This is our new logo we just debuted. And then for the reporting, we create a PDF once you've reported, and we post those online so you can track your progress and read about other organizations, other cities and campuses' work, so you can get a sense of what's going on and learn from them. And then finally, I want to emphasize we have tons of free resources, xerces.org/pollinator-resource-center. Click on the map and you can get a whole bunch of regionally specific advice on pollinator conservation. And on the right, if you go to beecityusa.org under the drop-down menu for cities, if you go to apply, we have application resources including handouts, our template resolution, and a preview of the application, and you're welcome to reach out to me if you have any questions. We also have upcoming webinars I encourage you to join us on, and feel free to reach out to me directly if I can help. Any questions?
Carla?
So if we were going to start this process and have interest in it, where would you start as a city?
I would start by going to our website and just reviewing the commitment and application steps. It's pretty straightforward. Most of the requirements really kick in after that first year that you have to get things up and running. So you don't have to have all your ducks in a row to start. We're here to support you as you implement these ideas. But I'd start by reviewing the commitment and make sure it feels reasonable. I think that you, as a city, are very well positioned for something like Bee City. I think you would have no problem meeting the requirements. The biggest, I'd say the hardest step is that integrated pest management plan if you don't already have one. But our staff, again, is available to consult. And we can provide lots of examples. And that document can be evolving. It doesn't have to be ready to go your first reporting year. Sometimes it takes 2 to 3 years. Because we want this policy, the plan to be really meaningful and actually used. We don't want it to be something that sits on a shelf.
Emily?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, Laura, for taking the time to present. This was really informative, and I don't know if anyone else watches the NRC meetings, but Sharon Salvaggio, another Xerxes employee, gave a presentation to the Natural Resource Committee, I think it was 2 months ago, and we voted, I'm on the NRC, we voted unanimously to recommend it to come to CIC. And when we drafted our plan for the upcoming year, maybe 2 years, the Bee City was on the agenda, like conserving pollinator habitat and increasing native plantings. So that's definitely something that there is like at least some community support for in Oregon City.
Dennis?
I'm curious how we go about it, like Carla, does it work through the city, or is this a neighborhood association thing, or could it be all joined together and be sponsored by the city and then picked up by the neighborhood associations? And I'm sort of curious how, along the same lines, how we might best facilitate this and have this happen. And thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you. So we try to be flexible. So though if you review the draft resolution, you can see how we ask you to find, the city sponsor, the department that's sponsoring it, but it doesn't have to be managed by the city. Oftentimes, especially with like kind of small to medium-sized cities, they might choose to have a nonprofit who actually houses the committee. Sometimes that's easier if there's issues with scheduling with the city, like meeting space or whatever, or budgeting. It can be easier to just have a nonprofit oversee that, and but they would be reporting and doing this work on behalf of the city, though. So that IPM plan would still need to be part of the city, but the other activities could be carried out by volunteers, community groups, a nonprofit. We try to keep it pretty flexible. As long as that committee has a diverse group of partners, it should be pretty smooth sailing. And we do ask that there at least be a city liaison to the committee, so somebody that's just the point person, so if the committee does have questions and they need actual city advice or support, they know who to reach out to.
Thank you.
Dee Dee?
As a neighborhood association and also members of parks foundations and NRC, we get a lot of people asking us about non-pesticide parks. And we've brought it up to our parks and our staff. A lot of that's contracted out, so they really don't want to disrupt status quo. But they don't have, sometimes I don't think they know exactly what they're spraying, because I certainly see all the little woolly caterpillars dying on the vine during fall. And we've suggested longer lawns and stuff like that, and some of our parks, letting the clover blossom. How do we direct our staff to maybe listen to some alternatives? Laura, I'm assuming that you guys have done some research about cost effectiveness of going natural versus contract spraying and/or spraying with pesticides. How do we get that in front of our city staff? I mean, we're already doing the other steps. We have the community, we have the volunteers. Now we need to we're working in reverse instead of the top working our way down. We're at the bottom working our way up. How do we cross that?
Yeah, that's, I think, a very common issue, especially with contracted landscaping. Many IPM plans do account for contractors. It should usually be a consideration in a well-rounded IPM plan. So we have some guidance. You can review some of the IPM plans of our affiliates that we recommend as good examples. And then we also have a pollinator conservation guide for park staff. I can share with you if you want to email me. I can pass along some free resources, including a calculation on converting lawn to pollinator meadow. And initially, the thing is with a lot of native pollinator plantings is initially it might be higher because you're planting new plants, but once they're established, the cost tends to be significantly lower because native plants tend to be way more tolerant of drought and need fewer, need less human interaction to succeed against pests. So certainly we know that over time it tends to be more affordable. The initial changeover though can be more expensive, but there should be a labor saving long term. But yeah, that is, I'd say, a barrier to doing a big conversion. But certainly, we know that a lot of pesticides are being over-applied, or cities or campuses may be not using the least toxic option. So if you reach out to me, I can connect you with our pesticide team as well, and they can provide some language on and some guidance on what pesticides, if they are choosing to use pesticides, you can basically tell contractors you have the choice of using, these 5 pesticides, or you can use anything but these 10 pesticides. There's all sorts of ways you can frame that. And contractors in general do know that they have to go along with this sort of thing. It may take some time to educate and remind people, but you certainly have the authority to tell them what they can and cannot use.
Laura, I'm going to try to see if I can kick this up a hill because I've sent in so many little pictures of interpretive signage and links and stuff like that, and I'm kind of being fallen on dead ear or deaf ear. Bob, is there anyone in these neighborhoods that don't want a bee pollinator thing? How do we direct this to Adam? Would you be the one that would have to make a motion to say?
No, you
we
would.
want, who would
You would.
be?
You or I, or anyone.
How do we ask our city?
You make a motion, my dear.
Emily wants to talk. She's
Okay,
got an idea.
go ahead.
We'll have to move this along pretty quickly now.
Yeah, so just, I guess to kind of wrap
Speak
things up, is it possible that we all just vote to recommend this with the support of the NRC to the commission for consideration?
You could put forth a motion.
Yes, I put forth that motion.
I second. We both.
Okay.
Read the motion out loud.
You second.
Motion to present to the city commission a,
She second.
and a second.
And a second.
To put forth a recommendation to the city commission to move forward to have Oregon City become a Bee City USA.
Perfect.
That'll be stripes.
second that officially.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None?
Shake your seat,
Passes.
shake your seats.
This is a no?
The NRC, the NRC did vote. I don't know if that was, did you get that or? Oh, yeah, so the NRC, this has been reviewed by the NRC already, and it's on the agenda for the next couple of years, to look at that. And, yeah, it was a unanimous vote also to do B City.
I'm just suggesting that having the NRC's full involvement
Oh,
help
yes.
get the city commission's attention.
Yeah.
Fair?
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. We'll hope we'll move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Okay, our next presentation is Greg Williams, the library director.
Thank you.
That's so funny. Okay. Test. Hey, all right. Now we're good. Sometimes technology works. Good evening, everyone. Chair LaSalle, members of the CIC, thank you very much for having me this evening. I'm Greg Williams. I'm the director of the Oregon City Public Library. And I'm here tonight to talk to you about some changes to our community room usage policy that I think you'll all be very interested in, especially pertaining to after-hours usage of the community room. Before we get into that, however, I am going to take the opportunity to share just a little bit of information about the library with you all, since I've got you here as a captive audience. Just 5 or 10 minutes. And the reason I'm sharing this information is a lot of this information kind of gives some insight into how we thought about this question about after-hours usage and some of the things that go through our mind when we're looking at services we offer to the community and how we can make those happen. So with that, so again, I'll give you a little bit of information about the library. We'll talk about the new after-hours meeting room program for city neighborhood associations and county CPOs. And then I'll just open it up to questions and feedback that you may have, and just a discussion about that or anything else you'd like to know about the library. So if that sounds good, all right. So the first thing, as anybody who's seen a presentation I've given recently knows, this is one of my favorite graphics to share. So just to make sure everybody's kind of on the same page about how the library district and library funding works in Clackamas County. In 2008, voters approved the library district of Clackamas County. It's a dedicated Oregon ORS 451 county service district, which has a permanent tax rate of about 39 cents per $1,000. And so everybody within the district is assessed that rate. And the money gets distributed to all the individual libraries in Clackamas County. And when the district was formed, the parties got together and said, okay, we need to look at countywide, what service areas is each individual library going to serve? And there was some horse trading and some back and forth. And finally, they defined those boundaries for each of our service areas. So here on the screen and in front of you, I believe you see, this is the Oregon City Public Library's library service area. If you look at the graphic, it's all of that shaded area, all the pink shaded area. It's a little hard to see on this size. The black and white cross-hatching, the black cross-hatching part that's mostly within that red square, that's the city of Oregon City. So that's city limits. Everything outside of that cross-hatching is unincorporated Clackamas County. And when you look at the size of our service area and the population, so our total service area is about 110 square miles, which is huge. Oregon City's size is about 10 square miles. So we have a very, very, very large, geographically large service area. And if you look at the map, the library building is in the upper northwest corner of our service area. When you look at the demographics of our service area, it's about 61,000 people. So about 37,000, 38,000 are city residents. But as I mentioned, there is a very large unincorporated population. So it's about 24,000 people. And I just put a little graphic there. If that part of our service area population was its own city, it would be larger than the city of Milwaukee. So we have a very large service area that we try to serve with our library. Any questions before I go on? Or should I save questions till the end? Is that the preference? Okay.
All right, so a few more comparative statistics about, well, what is that 61,000 people? How does that compare with some of our other peers? So on the left-hand side of your screen, I've shown the service area populations of all the libraries within the libraries in Clackamas County Cooperative. So that's the Clackamas County Library District. So about 425,000 people in Clackamas County that libraries serve. As I mentioned, we have our most recent statistics from Clackamas County. Our service area is about 61,000. We are the largest in terms of population of any library in Clackamas County. So along the left, you see all the listing of all the service area populations. And for each of those libraries, it includes a mixture of city and unincorporated residents. It's just different proportions based on where those boundaries were originally drawn. Statewide, one thing that libraries in the state of Oregon do really, really well is we collect and submit data to the state. And so every year the state produces this really cool public library statistical analysis where you can get all sorts of comparative data about all the public libraries in Oregon. And there's about 135 public libraries in the state of Oregon. And so here, I ranked them by size of population served. And so you can see, even just by that measurement, our 61,000 population served area, we're the 13th largest service area of any public library in the state of Oregon. So 13 out of 135. When you factor in the fact that many of those, actually all of those top 10 have multiple branches that are serving that population area, and you look at just the libraries that serve their populations with a single location, we're in the top 3 statewide. So we have the third largest service area of any library that's serving their population with just a single building. So that's one of the things that we think about is we have a very, very, very large service area, and our goal is to provide equitable, accessible service to everybody within our service area. So the next thing I wanted to share was just kind of the revenue sources, kind of the revenue breakdown. So I mentioned that, within the library district, everybody in the library district pays the same tax rates, 39 cents per thousand. It's assessed on every property within the district, and there's a convoluted formula which distributes that money to each individual participating library city. So I just wanted to give you kind of a snapshot of how ours breaks down. These are the major tax revenues by residence area, and this is for fiscal year 21-22, which is the last year that I had full year's worth of data for. So you can see, again, with our population breakdown, it's about 60% city, 40% unincorporated. You can see the amount of the library district distributions that were generated by each of those areas within our service area. The city does provide some general fund support, and that's solely from taxes levied on city residents. So when you look at the total revenue contribution, it is about 45% unincorporated residents and 55% city residents. So again, that's just something that goes through our mind when we're thinking about how do we equitably, provide services to our entire service area. We can't forget that those unincorporated folks pay almost half of the tax revenue coming into our library. So that it's a very important thing for us to keep in our minds. All right. So again, I mentioned statistics. We love statistics in the library. In the library world, these are again from the most recent State Library of Oregon statistics. I just did a couple just to kind of show some of the resources that we have available to us. And the reason I'm showing this is I know I've had conversations with many of the people in this room, and I know you've heard me say, resources. We have resource constraints. It's really hard for us sometimes to make services available. I wanted to show you this just so you know that I wasn't making stuff up. That we do have resources. So like I said, third largest service area for a single branch library in the state of Oregon. When you look at our per capita measurements, both for operating revenue and for our paid staff, as you can see on the charts there, revenue, we're about 90th out of 135. Staffing, we're about 100th out of 135. So we do have some constraints that we operate under trying to provide service to this very large service area. The other thing that some of you have heard me talk about is we are so grateful for having the new lovely library that we do. It is so much better than what we had before. And for the size of service area that we have and everything we would want to do, it already feels small to us. So we are constrained not only in terms of revenue and staff, but we do have some constraints when it comes to, facility space and making that available, again, equitably to the entire service area. And so again, I just pulled this off the state library statistics. So on a square footage per capita basis, out of 135 libraries in the state of Oregon, ours is about 130th, 129th. So we have space, but it's one of those resources that we have to be real, conscious about how we allocate that to make sure that we're providing equitable service to everybody in our service area. Okay, and then finally, when we think about, the other thing we think about, especially when we're talking about, meeting room and after hours usage, we did a lot of thinking about who is within our service area, and specifically those groups that were formed, under the state's Goal 1, Goal 1 citizen involvement goal for land use planning, and those were the city neighborhood associations. And this slide caused me the most angst because I'm just afraid I missed an active city neighborhood association. So hopefully I got them all. If I missed one, my apologies. So we've got our active city neighborhood associations within our service area. We've also got 6 county CPOs who are within our service area. And so we felt that if we were going to make some accommodations for city neighborhood associations to use some of our facilities after hours or on a special basis, because of what I've talked about before, the equity issue, we felt we had to make that available also to those county CPOs that are within our library service area. And so I just listed all the 6 county CPOs that are at least partially within the Oregon City Library service area. Okay, so far the takeaways. Oregon City Public Library service area, largest in Clackamas County, one of the largest in the state of Oregon. Our unincorporated residents make up about 40% of our population and generate about 45% of our annual operating revenue. We as library staff feel obligated to provide equitable service to everybody within our service area. We face some resource constraints just like every other city department and every local government. And all of these things go into kind of how we go forward with developing policies and trying to be conscious and thoughtful about how we do it. So with that, now we get to the good stuff. So we took all that information, we took all those considerations. We had some great conversations with our library board to kind of help us, craft a policy that was going to be able to meet the needs that we knew were out there in the community, but also kind of, made those resources available on an equitable basis to everybody in our service area. And what we came up with was we did some revisions to our community room policy. The ones I'm going to focus on now are just the ones that most directly impact the neighborhood associations and CPOs, but we also made some other changes to kind of to reduce some of the barriers to use that our old community room use policy had. So our new policy, especially when it comes to after-hours community room usage, we really tried to balance, our safety and security needs at the library building, our resource constraints, with those equitable access considerations and with the needs that we had heard expressed by neighborhood associations. So we have carved out a special type of usage in our community room policy. That's neighborhood association / CPO usage. That is the only group that qualifies for using the library's community room after hours, after our operating hours. So we've carved out an exception there. In order to make this work and in order to balance some of those concerns that we have, we kind of developed a partnership model. And so it's a partnership both between the library and the neighborhood associations and CPOs who might be interested in using the room. And it's also a partnership between all of the different neighborhood associations and CPOs working together to help make that resource available to the community. And we'll get into the mechanics of it in just a bit. The other thing I want to say before we get into it is this is new for all of us, right? This is not anything that we have done before. It's a very different world for us to kind of open up our building and leave it in the hands of somebody else. But, we want to try this. We think this can be very successful. That said, as we go forward, We know we're going to find opportunities for improvement. We know we will learn things as we go along. And we really do want and value your feedback as we go along. So this is not something that we try to develop in a vacuum. We want to make this work for everybody involved. So with that, I'm going to switch over. I believe everybody has got a copy of kind of the procedures that we put together for after-hours neighborhood association use. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to kind of hit the highlights and talk about how we envision this working. And then I'll open it up for any questions or comments that you may have.
Is that a single page?
No, it should be, if it's double-sided, if it's printed double-sided, it should be 4 pages.
It didn't staple them.
I wish you had a key for the acronyms.
It's there. It's on the
So-
back of the first page.
There we go.
I will coordinate it.
Okay. So, all right, so yes, one acronym you'll see a lot is VFM. We had to come up with something. VFM, Volunteer Facility Monitor. So that's what we're calling, this position that we're asking people to help fill, so a VFM.
Some of these are different.
That's okay.
Uh-oh.
I'll give you all new ones. Give me a second.
That's okay.
I'll stall so Christina can go there. So the first thing, and we can talk about this without the policy in front. The first thing that we just want to make sure everybody knows is, yes, we have a room to make available after hours. There are some considerations that we want everybody who's interested in using the room after hours just to keep in mind, before they say, hey, yes, this is going to work for us. We don't want, people using a room that's not going to work and meet their needs. So one of those, some of those, and they're all outlined here, but the ones I wanted to focus on. The biggest one is that it's, we have to make sure that we have a clean library facility every day when we open up. I could show you some pictures on my phone that would really scare everybody of some of the things that our janitorial crew has to deal with. So our janitorial crew has to come in after hours. And they have to clean the facility after hours, probably at the same time that some of these groups are going to be meeting. The way the library is laid out and the way that we have stairs and doors in the janitor closet, if that gate, we do have a gate, but if that gate is down, our janitorial crew cannot do their work. And so what we've put in here is one of the big considerations that we want everybody to be aware of is that our janitorial crew may be working while you're having a meeting in the community room. Now, if that ever happened, we would have our janitorial crew not vacuum in the community room, but they would be vacuuming in the rest of the library, and so that will cause a little bit of noise. They do have to clean the bathrooms, so those bathrooms may be closed for 10 or 15 minutes while he's mopping and keeping them dry. And depending on what other tasks our crew has to do, there may be some noise associated with that. So we're just trying to be upfront with kind of what the environment might be after hours. The other thing that we wanted to make sure everybody knew is that we typically have programs. We have programs in the morning. So part of the responsibility of the folks using the room is they have to make sure that it's put back the way they found it. And we have little diagrams on the wall which will tell you where to stack chairs and where to put tables. We just want to make sure that when our story time crew comes in the morning, for example, they don't have half an hour or 45 minutes worth of work to try to put the room into proper order. Some other minor things, the community room, we do use it as an emergency weather shelter. So for example, this summer we had several 100+ degree days, and our policy is that if the temperature outside is over 100 degrees, at the time of closing, we will keep the library's community room open as a cooling center. So that doesn't happen very often, but were that to happen and were there a night neighborhood association meeting scheduled at the same time, we would have to coordinate and figure out, how we balance those two needs. So other than that, so those are kind of the things that go along with using our community room. So the way we envision this working is we don't have the staffing to be able to staff our night meetings. That's just not something that's in our budget currently. And so we're going to ask the neighborhood associations to help us out with that, the neighborhood associations and the CPOs. And so what we have envisioned is a role called a VFM, a volunteer facility monitor. And basically what we'll do is we're going to train you. So you're going to learn everything that we deal with when it comes to closing the library down at night, when it comes to knowing when the janitorial crew is coming in, when it comes to our behavior policy, because correct me if I'm wrong, but all the neighborhood association meetings are public meetings, correct? So, I think everybody knows that we have, in the library world, we have behavior problems almost on a daily basis. And while I wish I could tell you that you were never going to have a behavior problem during a night meeting, you're going to have a behavior problem sometime during a night meeting. So we want to make sure everybody is comfortable and confident in dealing with those behavior problems that may occur. So that'll be part of the training. We will have training just on the basic things like where how to use the phone, where do you find supplies that you may need during a meeting, and just kind of the basic things so that we can leave the facility. We know we're leaving our facility in good hands. So our thought is the way we would like this to work is that if there's a neighborhood association who is interested in signing up to use the community room after hours, the first thing they would do is give us the names of a couple of people and say, hey, these are the people who want to be volunteer facility monitors. These are the people we would like you to train. These are the people who are going to be available to monitor meetings when library staff isn't there. And they will pass, the city has a standard volunteer background check that we do for all volunteers. So we would put those people through that volunteer background check. We would schedule a training session for them. They would probably be on Saturdays. Our staff person who's going to be doing the training is our library safety specialist named Garth. And he works Saturdays, so it would probably be a 2 or 3 hour training session that we would go through all these things to help train you. We would have checklists and equipment for everybody. Once the volunteers have passed that training session and have gotten trained, we would put them on a list, and we'll call it our VFM roster, right, of people who have gone through the training and know what to do and can monitor meetings. The last part of it, this is where the neighborhood associations supporting other neighborhood associations come in, is for every meeting that a neighborhood association or CPO wants to have in the library after hours, they have to say, hey, here are 2 people who are going to be here to serve as volunteer facility monitors. It can be anybody from that list. So if Kenema is going to have a meeting after hours, it does not have to be the Kenema VFM's volunteers monitoring that meeting. Kenema can go off the full list of everybody who's trained and call and say, hey, are you available? Are you available? Are you available? We just need 2 people to come and show up at the meeting. We will maintain the list. We will make sure that every neighborhood association has access to it. You'll have people's phone numbers and email addresses, but we will ask you before you book the room to make those arrangements with the 2 people who are going to come and act as volunteer facility monitors for the evening. And then really that's kind of it. So you'll have the meeting, you'll have those volunteers there. We'll tell you where we would like them just to make sure that everything goes swimmingly. On an annual basis, we will offer some refresher training just to make sure that everybody keeps up to date and knows if anything has changed with our alarm system or with our security procedures, anything like that. And then if a neighborhood association decides that this isn't for them, that's fine as well. We think this is not too high of a bar to make this resource available to everybody, but hopefully, we'll see. Hopefully everybody feels the same way. So that's the VFM program. Our next steps, our goal was to have the training in place during the month of February and get people trained so that on March 1st we could have started this. It's been a horrible, horrible February. So we've had a lot of things going on in the city. We did not make that timeline. So our new revised timeline is we would like to start this training sometime in April. We're going to take this month to kind of finish up our planning process and scheduling all those training sessions. I will say I know the neighborhood associations have been waiting patiently for us to develop this. So I am going to make the commitment here tonight, and I hope not 10 neighbor associations take me up on this. But starting March 1st, if you need to have an after-hours meeting in the library, I will staff it, which is how we used to do it, is the library director would just stay around. And so I want to make sure that you have access to the room. No fault of your own that we had the difficulties we had in February, so we're going to try to do everything we can to accommodate you in March. And then after this meeting, I will send off to, I'm presuming I can send it to you, I will send off our volunteer, the city's volunteer form. If anybody is interested in sending us the names of people from their neighborhood associations who would like to be trained for this, we will start that process, and we will start when we're ready to go with the training session, hopefully beginning of April. We will reach out to everybody and schedule those sessions and get it all set. And with that, now I made a rookie mistake. I don't have a cartoon like Josh did. So I think next time I'm going to have to go to him and get him to give me something. But at this point, I would be happy to entertain any questions on this program, anything the library is doing, or any feedback that you have about what we put together.
So just real quick, because I know we're short on time, we have a spot for our meetings in our neighborhood. We're lucky. But the fact is our, neighborhood association technology I've mentioned several times is a dead zone. So I'd like to get trained just so it's an option if in case it was like we needed a lot of technology resource for a meeting. Is that possible still with 2 people?
Yeah, so part of our policy is we have some technology that we can provide. Okay. And honestly, as we go forward, as we have plans to provide more and more, we don't have it yet, but like we have a couple of laptops that we've already identified that we are going to make available for neighborhood associations.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
There are some, security concerns with IT, so we have to work with city IT to make sure that we get those configured the way they want. We do have some Meeting Owl cameras, which we are big fans of. We are perfectly happy to train you in using those, train neighborhood associations in using those. We will show you how to, hook up to the network port or connect to the Wi-Fi. The only thing we won't be able to do is we won't be there. We won't be there at night to help out.
And we could possibly borrow those if we needed them, checking them out if we have a neighborhood association need. Because the biggest thing I have is a hotspot,
Yes, okay. So we do have hotspots available for checkout right now.
How many though? Because you guys...
20, we have 22 and I budgeted for 11 more.
Okay.
So they cost us $120 a year.
And you gotta take care of them because they're kind of fragile, like you have the kids.
Yes, and so when they come back damaged, we have to replace them. We can certainly talk about if that becomes something that, is another way to support neighborhood associations and CPOs with some reserve technology. We can certainly talk about that. That's something I would want to talk with my library board about. And again, with that equity consideration, we would have to make sure that we had sufficient resources and made it accessible, not just to city neighborhood associations, but to any county CPOs who might also want the same consideration.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sarah?
First off, Greg, thank you. You've done a lot to make this happen. And I have 2 questions.
Sure.
The first is for you, and
Okay.
the second, I believe, is for Christina. How big is the facility? How many people can we put in?
So the fire capacity on the wall is 71. We have, in our policy, we have limited it to 50 because quite honestly, when you have, the chairs set up in rows and you've got people speaking in front of you, 50 is about, all you can hold. And also we are trying to, I know nobody likes to hear this, but COVID is still a thing. And so, so we did try to go through and say, okay, if in order to provide at least a little bit of distancing between people in a meeting, what can we comfortably fit? And 50 was what we came up with.
I appreciate that answer. Thank you. Now, Christina, I believe you were the instigator that hooked us up with Sue's at the bus barn or whatever we call that facility, which is working. But I believe somebody has to be paid to be in the building while we're there. Is that a less optimum choice for the city in that case? I mean, this is my
So I
question.
think that's something Susan's volunteering on her own through the school district. So
I
she actually-
checked with the person that was there, which was not Suze, and I said, are you getting paid? And she said, yes.
Okay, then it might be through the school district.
Okay.
It's not through the city.
It's not through the city, but somebody's paying for it. Okay, just something to keep in consideration. I'm good now, thank you.
Linda?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
That's it, okay.
Denise?
Oh, so if we wanted to volunteer, could we pick just like a specific night per month or a specific night per week? Or is it, we're gonna be on the list and they're gonna
Yes.
call us and say, are you available?
Yes. And we will leave that to everybody who's on the list is going to be able to say, yes, I'm available, no, I'm not.
Okay.
If you get to the end of the list and you haven't found anybody to work it, that's the part, we just don't have the staffing to be able to accommodate that. So hopefully, the goal is that the neighborhood associations who are interested in using this as a resource are going to say, yeah, we got people, we'll get them on the list, we'll get them trained, and of course, we'll help each other out, we'll support each other.
Steve?
So one thing that you mentioned in here was that it has to be a day that the library itself was already open.
Correct, yes.
So couldn't come in on a holiday.
On a holiday, no, our policy says it's a day mainly it's because we have staff who are going to be available via phone, if something goes wrong or if they need help. Also, part of our policy is that when the group shows up, there's kind of a handoff, right? They check in with a staff member,
Okay.
and the staff member makes sure, okay, you've got your phone, you've got your access card, we've checked off that you've got the 2 people here. If we don't have staff working on holidays, and so I don't have the resources to bring people in on holidays.
And the electronics includes the ability to display a Zoom session and.
Yes, so we've got a projector. You can plug in your laptop into some HDMI ports in the floor. The meeting owl would probably be a great solution for making sure that everybody can hear what's going on and see participants in the meeting. We will work with the volunteers and kind of show them how to do that. And part of the training is here's our nice owls that we really like, and here's how to treat them nicely, and make sure that they don't get broken.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, thank you, Greg. That's very informative and
Very
helpful,
welcome.
and thank you for working that out for the community.
Well, thank you, and thank you, everybody, especially the ones who I've been talking. Thank you for your patience. I know this has been a bit of a wait, and we really do appreciate your support and allowing us the time to figure out how we're going to make this work. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The next presentation is not on your agenda. I added it. Carla Laws would like to speak about a tree planting project.
Oh, yes, I'm gonna let Dee Dee, she's the, got the dates down, go.
Let's try to.
Okay, I think we're talking.
Let's try to make it brief.
Yes.
I think we're
Just
talking
one
about
second.
Singer Creek,
Yeah.
right? Okay, we're doing 2 cleanups at Singer Creek. The Greater Oregon Watershed Council has been working down at Singer Creek along with our city staff for last month. And then there is this coming March 11th, we have Troop 140, and any volunteers, we can come for more planting and cleanup in the park. And then also the second one will be on April 15th. And they both start at 9 and finish about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. There's water, refreshments. Everyone does stretching in the beginning. Good spirits, and we're giving away free poppy seeds, non-GMO, to fertilize or to sprinkle around your neighborhoods. So those have been really, really successful. We've been having about 15 to 20 volunteers. It seems to be about a head count most of those days. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Another item that I'm going to cover tonight, which is not on the agenda, but it needs to be addressed very, very quickly, is the CIC budget.
Yes.
And I'm gonna pass something around, there's one for each neighborhood.
Each neighborhood, oh, we have to share?
Yes, you have to share, there's one per neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
The current budget calls for $1.86 per, where is it here? There we go.
So, yeah.
$1.86 per household budget. As you know, several of the neighborhoods have asked for more money because of the budget constraints. We've been able to provide that because not all the neighborhoods are active.
So are these half the same?
However, this can't go on. And so what I've done is I have put together a budget for each neighborhood with an allocation of $2.63 as opposed to $1.86 per household. And if you'll notice in each of these, it shows how many are in each neighborhood, how many households. Of course, the allocation per household at $1.86. Your total allowance, yearly allowance, how much you spent to date. This may not be exactly accurate because it may not be up to date. Shows your yearly meetings per your bylaws. It shows the average cost per mailing historically for you. The projected yearly cost, depending on how many meetings you have per year. And it shows in some cases the projected year-end deficit for this fiscal year. It then proposed allowance at $2.63 per household. It shows how much that would cost per meeting or generate per meeting. The total and cost per year, like in Kenema, it shows $512.85 that you would get from that $2.63 per household. I've also put in one bonus meeting per neighborhood, just for the fun of it. Why not?
Good for you.
What the hell?
Something might come up.
And then the proposed yearly allowance for each neighborhood. Now, adding all these up, this about doubles our budget. We have now $26,000 or $29,000, depending on how you read the budget. Christina and I are trying to figure out that with our finance department. But doubling what we are using right now, which is a realistic figure. I based that figure on current usage and costs. And I need to present this to the city commission. I need to get on their agenda as soon as possible because they are discussing budget April 27th. And I need to get across to them that we need the money. Now, I have researched a little bit of information about how can the city afford this. Well, I'll tell you, by God, they can afford it.
Okay.
General fund expenditures, it lists other services at $1,843,000 plus change. What are other services for almost $2 million? Community programs and grants, $1.7 million. We're community. Contingency, which is kind of a catch-all, $7,600,000. Policy and administrative expenditures, other services are listed at $409,000. Special programs are $202,000. Community programs and grants, $1,792,000. City Commission expenditures, special programs, $166,000, whatever those are. Budget highlights listed on page 39. Neighborhood groups is, there's $52,000 there. So we're a neighborhood group. I don't know what that's put in the budget for, but we'll certainly find out. Economic development expenditures, we certainly help with the economic development. The lists on page 51, community programs and grants, $1,785,000. And then in general government lists at page 55, reserved for future expenditures, $1,298,874. Now, in that budget, if the city commission, with all due respect, can't come up with a lousy $55,000 for their community leaders in the city Citizens Involvement Committee, then I think something's wrong. We've been at $26,000 for several years. I tried to look it up, but I couldn't really, I didn't have the time to really dig into it myself. Anyway, you all have in hand, if there's any buddy that has any heartburn about what I've put together for their neighborhoods, be sure to let me know, because we gotta get going on this quick or it'll be too late.
Yeah.
Bob,
Yes.
the bonus meeting that you have put in there, is that kind of like your contingency sort of thing?
Yeah, if you have something come up in the neighborhood that you need an extra meeting for that's really super, super important and the time frame is critical, then yeah, that's a little extra money for that sort of thing.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And the other question I had was, did you build in any inflation costs into these numbers?
No.
Okay.
No, that's what my research told me, that $2.63 is based on pretty as close as I could get to current projections for neighborhoods.
Yeah,
It's a hard thing to put a figure on.
It is. I'm just thinking if we're gonna, go with a number and say, hey, we want to double, and then, we got to go back again and say, oh, hey, we're short.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because Dan sent me an email, if I can find it here. Let's see here. Your figure was $3 and something, wasn't it?
Yes, something like, yeah, and that's what it cost me today. So that's current today, and that's whatever inflation we have in the next 6 months, it's gonna go up. But those are perfect numbers.
Okay. And Dan needs to ask us for more money tonight too.
Yes.
I haven't forgotten that. So anyway, you all should have my email address, and if you have any differences or other ideas, I spent a good part of my weekend on this, to be honest with you. Please contact me as soon as you can. And then, Christina, could you please see if I can get on the city commission meeting soon?
Right there. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I will contact Jacob, who will work to get, to coordinate the next available meeting.
Okay.
One thing to remind when everyone is, if anybody, Bob and other people who are advocating, this fund pays for A-frame signs Or it could be if there was a special newsletter that people wanted to do. So it's not just postcards. So there is something to be said about, you know, a neighborhood can choose between a couple different options, but is the budget enough to be able to do that? And I think what you're hearing from Dan and what Elyville had to do is because they wanted to do A-frame signs, they would either have to have given up a meeting, or because we have additional money this year because of inactive neighborhoods, able to get that. But as more neighborhoods are active, which is a good thing, there's less of that extra money.
Yeah.
And so it's gonna be hard to do A-frames and postcards, or a newsletter and postcards, so.
And I did include, of course, you don't have them, but I did include in my budget thing here, all of the inactive neighborhoods. So that, I think it came to $54,000 or something, included the inactive neighborhoods. So,
Could we make a motion tonight, maybe to accept this, a little more conversation about this? So you get on the agenda, then you would have the full support of the CIC?
I would appreciate that.
Are you gonna make that?
You go ahead, you're ready to make the motion, let you go ahead and make.
I can make the motion that we recommend that Bob LaSalle, our chair, go to the city commission on our behalf and request an increase based on current numbers and figures that have been from his calculations and research on the budget online. I motion that we go forward with this.
I second that.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I abstain. Thank you, I'll do that. And Christina will let me know when I can
Christina?
go before the, of course, they now have fair warning.
It'll be an ambush, huh?
2 out of the 5.
Is it possible too that, and I don't know, this is up to Bob, if you got the numbers where the neighborhood associations are at right now, especially the ones that are a deficit, so that you have that to kind of show the city commission as well?
Yeah.
That was probably my update in my liaison report. I wish I was able to update our spreadsheet for this month, but I wasn't because I couldn't get into our server. So I have the Buell's invoices. I just don't have any access to get into that Excel spreadsheet. The moment I can, I will update it. But what I can do is, I have the one from last CIC meeting in February, and I can just at least at the minimum do a line item of the existing Buell's invoices I received this last month, because I received a bunch. So I can send an email out just line iteming them. If it won't be as pretty, but it'll provide the information. And then one day, hopefully I can.
Okay. Our next item is,
And Emily has something to say.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on what Josh said, would it make sense, and is it possible to propose what you're suggesting plus an average rate of inflation to make it so that it doesn't have to be a continuous kind of like back and forth, or?
Oh, okay.
Add in a COLA, sure.
Well, the budget is for the biennium, so it'll be for 2 years. But I think there is something to think about was every 2 years to, at a minimum, look at the COLA, but they can't make any commitments. The city commission can't make any commitments for future budgets. But it is an interesting line item to put in, is like thinking about it before you even look at any additional allocation for whenever there's a new biennium.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, one more.
Yeah.
The costs spent to date,
Yeah.
what's the year? Is that,
It's July 1 to
July
June
1.
30th, yeah. And so the last updated postcard spreadsheet is on the February CIC agenda. And then I'll send in an email all the Buell's invoices I received from this month.
right?
I like Park Place would be more than that now.
So, but Park Place, we're showing a deficit for our next meeting. So when we send out the postcard for May, we won't have the money for it.
And that may be one where you might have to ask, as a neighborhood, if you could use the additional money in the,
Yeah, we'll still have some money left from the inactive neighborhoods. We'll be able to, so you'll have to come begging. That's a good one. Anything else? Okay, Dan is asking for additional money for his neighborhood mailing. And if I read it correctly, you said you needed $1,332.65 for this month, but taking out your current balance, I think you would be.
This month I need about $300. I didn't bring my numbers with me.
Oh, okay, well, $300 is better than the figure I had of $472, so.
Oh, yeah.
We're here.
But I need some money for also May.
Okay.
Well, last month, the
Yeah,
year.
but I hope it's not $1,300.
I hope not either. If we go with the full color brochures rather than black and white brochures, the cost actually goes down almost $300 a mailing, which is something I've been working on, so.
Well, my personal opinion is that until we get our budget stabilized, full color stuff is not appropriate. You know, all the other neighborhoods have been pretty much going the postcard size, black and white, maybe colored paper.
But you can do a 6x11 full color for about 20% cheaper than the black and whites you're doing now.
Weird.
Including postage. But you have to mail out 3 weeks in advance versus 1 week with black and whites.
and Dan, is this not from Buell's? This is from another company?
But Buell's, they said once we get the final numbers, they'll look at the numbers and hopefully they'll come and.
Okay, just if anybody wants to use somebody other than Buell's, let me know, because it's easier for me to get a contract with them than you don't want to be a place where we have to reimburse you. So if you're not using Buell's, call me.
Okay.
Would it be appropriate for you and Dan to work together and kind of bring back to the CIC some alternate printing opportunities? I mean, it sounds like you've done some research there and
Yes,
ended up with better figures than what we've been experiencing.
no problem.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, let's see here. Then we've covered everything except I passed out the information that William Gifford offered for Google account information to everybody. So if you need help with Google stuff or advantages, why he's offered what he had available. And then our next presentation is the staff liaison updates. Christina.
I don't have much. I wish I had more. Hopefully, as many of you are aware, we've had server and computer technicalities this month, and many staff have been locked out of access to the server. Our building department has been time traveling and doing hard copy inspections on triplicate and hard paper, so we've been making it work, but it's been.
Have you got any old mimeograph machines?
Almost, oh, it smells good. Almost. Though, so as soon as I'm able to get in, I hope to reconcile the postcard spreadsheet. And then the liaison report, I just had the standard information. As always, anybody who was interested in learning about what's going on with land use, send them the link on my liaison report that talks about how you can subscribe. That is the fastest, easiest way. You can choose everything in the city or just the neighborhoods you want. And then always encourage people to sign up for the Trail News monthly newsletter. I was just looking at our survey that went out this fall. We just received a copy of the report. And by and large, people are still saying that the quarterly Trail News is their number one source of info, but we now have a more up-to-date monthly version, and I don't know if that, new things, it takes a while to get people to know that that's a thing, but one thing you can do as neighborhood associations is remind people that, the quarterly is good, but it's pretty static. We have to turn that in months and months before it gets printed, but the monthly newsletter is a lot more current information. So always encourage people to sign up to that monthly e-Trail News. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to our roundtable. Start with Kanema. Linda?
We are getting ready to have a steering meeting this week. Tomorrow. Just announce what we're doing. So we're ready to go. And thank you for the library that's going to be there with the NEBA. We have our 3 volunteers ready to go. And I'm hoping they can pass the, I'm hoping we're going to do this.
Might be questionable.
Dennis, do you have anything?
No.
Caulfield, Dan?
I guess our first meeting, we had 17 people show up, plus visitors and speakers. And
Nice.
Great, that's
we
great.
got the A-frame signs all over town, and so hopefully we start getting more and more people in. And
Good work.
so,
Yeah, way to go. Congratulations. Elyville, Carla?
On next week, on Tuesday, we are having John Williams come to talk about urban renewal and in general, like a lot of information that a lot of average person does not know. And probably a lot of people who serve the community as well. And then we're going to have, after that, Seth Henderson come and present Abernathy Green. And then just overall, Dee Dee mentioned things coming up, and we had a neighborhood issue with the same developer we've had problems with, work at 8:30 in the morning on Sunday. So our neighborhood on Holmes Lane is really upset about it. So we're trying to deal with that. And that's it.
Dee Dee?
We'll also be giving away our poppy seeds and doing our neighborhood beautification. And that's what, I could have sworn he wrote golden poppies on this. But anyway, that's what's inside your bags. And anyone who doesn't want them, give them back to me. We're gonna get them all over this town.
Yeah.
Hillendale, Josh?
Well, I'll defer to Sarah.
Are you sure?
Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll start off and then you can pick up the slack if I leave anything out, okay?
Sounds good.
We had a steering committee since our last meeting, and it was kind of an interesting one because Chase Bank is putting a new face on an old building that's right there it's on Malala by the Wells Fargo Bank. It was a credit union, or can you hear me? Should I take this off? It used to be a credit union, so it's one bank building turning into a new bank building is what it is. But there had been a big fire in there, so it needs to tear down. But we had to go through the process of being a neighborhood association with what Josh had presented about some higher level of an operation, and we had to have our little Zoom meeting with the people at Chase Bank, and that was very interesting for me because I didn't know how all that worked, and now I do. And we got a couple more because we broadcast it more broadly about what we were doing because we had this special thing. We have a couple of email lists for both Hillendale and Tower Vista, and we actually got a few people to our steering committee meeting. It was like victorious. And then we have another steering committee meeting tomorrow, and we too have Seth Henderson coming in April for our general assembly meeting. And that's all I can remember. Josh, do you have anything?
Nope, sounds spot on to me.
Okay, thank you. McLaughlin, Denise?
We just had a meeting last week in person. Woohoo! And
I meant to be there, but something came up.
we missed you. But we met at the Baptist Church just off of McLaughlin. And they did a great job setting up for us, and they even provided some munchings and crunchings, so it was great. Mainly it was Seth Henderson from Summit Development came and talked to us, answered questions. And John Williams was invited, but he didn't show up. So we also, the other thing is we decided we are going to sell snow cones again this summer at the concerts in the park. And we had 29 people at our meeting.
Nice.
I love to hear these
So we're still
in-person
hoping to get
meetings
back to the
going
library.
again and the strong attendance. Wonderful. Park Place, Steve.
So we had our general meeting last Monday. And it was the development on, was that Seth? So he was the primary, and then we also got an introduction to our latest TAC representative. So he gave us his overview. He's only been in the neighborhood for a couple of years, so we're glad that somebody's coming in and is taking up from all us old farts that have been doing this for a long time. So we had 34 in person and 12 people on Zoom.
Nice.
So it was well attended and lots of questions.
As usual, there's never enough time for Seth to give the
No.
continuing presentation. Questions always outlast him. Rivercrest, Emily.
We have our next meeting in 2 Thursdays, so I think it's the 16th. And we're having John Williams come for the urban renewal, and also a representative who contacted us about foster care opportunities. So she's going to come give a talk, and then we're having kind of like a special meeting in April to have Abernathy come, so Seth can give his talk about the development. And then we're having someone from CERT come, the emergency preparedness. We're excited about that because that's something that a couple of residents have reached out to us about since we've kind of become a more active neighborhood association.
Thank you. Commissioner Adam.
Yes, thank you. So the first thing that I wanted to address is you've all heard about the cyber issue that we had this last month, and I really just want to stress that the investments of our staff have made it so that this episode has been as smooth as it could have been. All of our data was backed up, so we didn't have to pay a cent to the person who was trying to get money out of us because we already had it. We had already invested in that software that would keep us protected. And so I really want to give a shout out to our staff who had the foresight, because this really is the biggest battle zone for governments everywhere. The cyber security front is a really important thing. Excited to hear about the Bee City USA at our city commission meeting whenever that happens. This is something that I'm really supportive of, and I've talked to Emily about this in the past. And so I could go on and on about bees and insects, but I won't. The big thing is that we recently just had our goal setting retreat over the weekend on Friday and on Saturday. And so it's been a very busy week for us. We spent the day and plus another half of a day discussing what we want to do for the upcoming biennium. And so I had brought forth that, for me, success at the community engagement front looks like having all of our neighborhood associations active, and not only active, but having the resources that they need to actually be able to do their job effectively. And so I absolutely hear what you're saying, and I'm excited to hear again what you have to say as we have our budget discussions further. Again, I want to give a shout out to our staff, Christina and Greg over here, for their work on the public meeting spaces. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with various people to help try and get this moved forward. And so I'm really appreciative for their work on this, especially considering the vast constraints that Greg has outlined for us there. And then lastly, for tolling, this is always something that I'm going to be talking about. And I was actually at the Park Place Neighborhood Association meeting, and they had someone scheduled to speak about tolling who didn't show up, but I was happy to take their place and speak about it for her. But as you know, this is the kind of the area where I'm the City Commission's liaison on this issue. And so a big milestone has just been reached. They've released their draft environmental assessment, which is something they're required to do by federal law. And it is a very, very long document. If you include all the appendices, I think it's over 2,000 pages. And so they gave us a window of 45 days for public comment on that. Then they did offer us an additional 15 days. And so that's something we were kind of hoping for another 45 rather than 15, but we'll take what we can get. And so I'm still reading my way through that. And I just have general concerns about what just someone from the general public would have to be able to read all the way through that in a matter of 45 days, and well, now 60 days, and get in a well-reasoned argument for public comment. But I wanted you to be aware that that is available online on the ODOT website for review and public comment. And lastly, we have a committee in Clackamas County. It's made of representatives from each of the Clackamas County cities. So someone from their city council is on it, and we talk about the tolling and how we plan to respond. And I was recently elected the co-chair of that committee, and so looking forward to having a more amplified voice on that, especially as we come into a more critical period with some concrete findings coming out of their study. So absolutely, I will keep you updated, and that's what I have for today. And I see, Dee Dee, you have your placard up.
I just wanted to say, I appreciate all the volunteer hours our commissioners put in. And because you put in all the volunteer hours, I make a point of going to YouTube usually, because I can't hear inside of the Lipke building at all. And just starting to even see how the outline was on the first workday, it was like you were all in a shower together. You couldn't hear one word. I went, oh, I'll just hook up my hearing aids and put it on my Bluetooth, and instead I got an orchestra of you all in the shower talking. The audio was impossible to hear.
Was this the goal-setting retreat?
Yes, the whole time. There's nothing as audible that you can understand that unless you were there, heard it, then you're rehearing it again, knowing what that person's talking about. So no possible way. And it's a disservice for us to try to support you when we just get frustrated. And we can't even have an educated talk with you because we couldn't listen.
Yeah, I was wondering how we were going to do about that, because I will say that we will not have that problem in the near future, because we were at Clackamas Community College in one of their rooms just for a special occasion, because we were going to be together so long for a retreat, quote unquote, to be in a different environment was helpful for us, but that is not our regular meeting space. But even in our regular meeting space, we're still having issues, and so...
Just saying, I mean, can we have Bluetooth on our speakers? I don't know how you can, I mean, but we've spent so much money on this thing, and
Well, I'm glad that
you're making us handicapped.
I'm glad that you recognize there's still a problem up there, because when Channel 6 was up there the last time, I was watching their two people, and the recorder was asking something of the cameraman, and she pointed to the city commission, and he indicated to her by, they couldn't get anything on their audio. And in fact, that same night, the next day, during the broadcast, they showed the mayor speaking, but you couldn't understand her.
Not a word.
And they had a caption at the bottom of the screen quoting what she was saying. So, it's hurting us in more than just
I didn't have.
Us,
Absolutely, and this is something
Channel
that.
6 News goes all over the place, so.
And this is something that I think each of the commissioners has said repeatedly, and all I know is that it's been a work in progress with the various contractors and the audiovisual stuff, not to mention the physical aspect of the dais being a little higher than I think a lot of us would prefer that it is, so.
I agree with that too, yeah. They need to cut the dais down and raise the floor. And, I'll say,
here.
Commissioner Mike, you have something for us?
Just listening.
Thanks for coming.
Hey, Christina?
If it's okay with everybody, I do have an email that was sent to me as general communication with ODOT that has ways to comment on the assessment, the 60 days, and I can forward that to everybody.
Oh, yeah, great, yeah.
I think it's, I might crib a little bit because I think it's a lot, but I can grab the piece that, the ODOT with all the good links that you need.
Okay. Anybody else? This meeting is adjourned.